The conference chamber felt different now. The holographic displays were dark. The comfortable atmosphere was gone. 7 Velatri stood in a line, their bodies rigid, their colors locked in hostile crimson. Chancellor Rilveth stood in the center, his forearms crossed over his chest in what Jiwoo's quick study suggested was a defensive posture. Jiwoo stood alone on the opposite side of the room. No Ambassador Yuna, no Colonel Tay, no XT7 device. Just her, a sheet of paper with crude notes and 5 minutes to save everything. She took a breath and began. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out in broken Velatri primary dialect. I speak bad, sorry, device, broken. I try, truth. The sounds coming from her mouth were probably terrible. Human vocal cords couldn't produce the harmonic overtones that made Velatri speech beautiful. But the important part was that she was trying. She wasn't hiding behind technology. She was standing vulnerable and imperfect before them. One of the Velatri delegates shifted slightly. Their colors changed from solid red to red mixed with curious orange. That was something. Not forgiveness, but at least attention. Jiwoo continued, checking her paper notes. Device made. Wrong words, not my want, not human want. She held up the paper showing the XT7's error logs that Hana had printed. Machine, lie, translate, bad. Chancellor Rilveth's colors didn't change, but he made a gesture with 2 of his hands. Jiwoo checked her reference guide. That gesture meant explain further. He was listening. You ask. Jiwoo struggled to find the right sounds. She held up a colored marker and drew a quick picture of a child. Then she drew protective arms around it. Protect, small ones, innocent. You ask how humans are protect. She drew another picture, a family together, then that same family with some members crossed out. Her hand trembled as she drew it. My family gone, attacked, killed. She pointed to herself. I alone, sad, lost. The Velatri's colors began to shift. The solid crimson was fragmenting, mixing with other shades. Jiwoo couldn't be sure what it meant, but it was change. Change was good. Ambassador Yuna. Answer. Honest. She say, humans protect, strong, fight. For family. Fight. For children. Jiwoo spread her hands wide, trying to copy a Velatri gesture of openness. But device. Make wrong. Change words. Make sound. Like humans. Want hurt, want conquer. Not true. Tears began rolling down Jiwoo's face. She didn't try to hide them. 3 days. I translate. Good talking, understanding, happy, then device fail. Everything break. All wrong, So sorry. She pulled out a picture she had printed, the image of New Busan colony before the attack. Beautiful buildings, green parks, families walking together. Then she showed the next image, the same colony destroyed, burning, empty. My home. My family, my brother. Name Jinwoo, he, 12, want be pilot. Want fly stars, her voice broke. He dead parents, dead grandmother, dead, all gone. Jiwoo looked directly at Chancellor Rilveth. This, why I hear, this, why alliance, important, not for power, not for conquering, for protection, for family, for hope, for children live, children fly stars, like Jinwoo, want. She held out her hands, showing they were empty. I have no perfect words, no machine, just human, just heart, just truth. She placed her hand over her chest. I ask, you see, you understand, humans, not perfect humans, make mistake. But humans, not liars, not conquerors, just people, want friends, want peace, want protect ones we love. The room was silent. Jiwoo stood there, tears on her face, waiting. She had given everything she had. If it wasn't enough, then humanity would lose its chance at this alliance. But at least she had tried. At least she had been honest. Chancellor Rilveth's colors began to change. The red faded, replaced by deep blue, the color of thoughtful consideration. He made a complex gesture with all 4 arms and released a scent that Dr. Minho's sensor detected as one associated with recognition or remembrance. Then the Chancellor did something unexpected. He spoke slowly, carefully in broken English. We understand long ago, 600 years the Velatrium conquered, taken by species, with perfect machines, perfect translation, perfect promises, all lies. His colors shifted to purple mixed with gold, seriousness and sincerity. We saved by people, not perfect, people with broken words, but true hearts. No technology, just courage, just honest. Another Velatri stepped forward, also speaking in terrible broken English. You try speak our language. You show weakness, show imperfect, show true self. This very important. Chancellor Rilveth continued. Perfect machine. Make perfect words, but hide truth. Hide feeling. Your broken words show real heart, show real pain, show real hope. He moved closer to Jiwoo. His colors were now brilliant blue mixed with gold. The question, I asked, was test, final test. We want to see if humans hide behind perfect technology, or if humans show true self. Jiwoo's eyes widened. A test? Your machine fail, but you, not fail, you. Come here, no technology, no protection, just human. The Chancellor's colors brightened. This, what we need see, this, what make us trust. The other Velatri were changing colors too, shifting from hostile reds to welcoming blues and golds. One of them made a gesture that Jiwoo's reference guide said meant acceptance and friendship. Chancellor Rilveth gestured to the empty table. We continue talk, but different way. No perfect machine, just people, talk slow, make mistake, learn together. More true, more honest, more real. Jiwoo could barely believe what she was hearing. You mean the alliance? Alliance? Yes, but better alliance. Alliance of imperfect beings. Who try, who care, who show real heart. The Chancellor attempted what might have been a smile. It was hard to tell with alien features, but the intention was clear. The station's alarm was still counting down. 20 minutes remained. But now, instead of a countdown to disaster, it was simply time until the next meeting could be scheduled. The crisis was over. The misunderstanding was resolved. The alliance would continue. Jiwoo sat down suddenly, her legs too weak to hold her. Hana burst into the room and rushed to her side. We monitored everything. Jiwoo, you did it! Ambassador Yuna entered more slowly, her face showing relief and amazement. Chancellor, thank you for understanding. Thank you for giving us another chance. Chancellor Rilveth's colors swirled in patterns Jiwoo was beginning to recognize as warmth and friendship. No thank, Jiwoo. Give us better gift. She show us. Human spirit, strong, honest, brave, this, what we seek, this, what make good alliance. As the Velatri delegation prepared to return to their quarters, the Chancellor approached Jiwoo one last time. He spoke in his own language slowly, and Jiwoo understood most of it through context and the patterns she'd learned. You lost family. So did we long ago. We understand that pain. This alliance will protect other families, other children, other dreams. Together we will make sure fewer people know the pain we have known. Jiwoo nodded, unable to speak through her tears. But these were different tears. Not tears of grief or fear, but tears of relief and hope. The device had failed at the worst possible time. But in that failure, humanity had shown something more valuable than perfect technology. They had shown courage, vulnerability, and the willingness to keep trying even when everything went wrong. And that, it turned out, was exactly what the Velatri needed to see. Jiwoo woke in the medical bay with her head feeling like it had been split open. The first thing she noticed was the absence. The XT7 device was gone from her temple. Her hand moved up automatically and found only smooth skin and a small bandage. Easy. Dr. Minho's voice came from her left. The device was destroying your neural pathways. I had to remove it, memory rushed back. The negotiation. The terrible translations. The Velatri leaving in anger. Jiwoo sat up too quickly and immediately regretted it. How long was I unconscious? 20 minutes. We have 40 minutes left before the Velatri deadline. Hana stood nearby, her face pale. Jiwoo, what happened in there? Why did they leave? Jiwoo looked at her hands. They were shaking. The XT7 failed. It translated everything wrong. The Chancellor asked about protecting innocent people, but the device made it sound like he was asking about conquest. Ambassador Yuna answered honestly about defending ourselves, but the device made it sound like we were threatening them. Hana's eyes widened. You mean the entire conversation was mistranslated? Everything. And each wrong translation made them angrier, which made the device translate worse, which made everything spiral out of control. Jiwoo felt sick. 3 years of perfect translations, and it had failed at the worst possible moment. Colonel Tay entered the medical bay, his face grim. The Velatri have sealed their section of the station. Their ships have weapons charged. They've sent one message. Humanity has 40 minutes to leave peacefully, or they'll consider us a threat and respond accordingly. Can we contact them? Jiwoo asked. They're refusing all communication. They think we're liars who pretended to want peace while actually planning conquest. Tay's jaw was tight. Ambassador Yuna is trying to send written messages, but without translation, we don't even know if they can read our language. Jiwoo stood up, ignoring the dizziness. I need to see the Chancellor. Face to face, Dr. Minho put a hand on her shoulder. Jiwoo, without the XT-7, you can't translate Velatri communication. Their language is too complex for human vocal cords and senses. I know, Jiwoo said quietly, but I have to try. Hana pulled out a data pad. What are you thinking? For 3 days I've been connected to the XT-7, translating every word the Velatri spoke. But I wasn't just a passive channel. My brain was learning their patterns. I was watching their color shifts, smelling their scent signals, seeing their hand gestures. Jiwoo began pacing. The device made me lazy. It did all the work. But before I had the XT-7, I learned languages the old human way by watching, listening, practicing, making mistakes. You can't possibly learn their entire language in 40 minutes, Colonel Tay said. I don't need to learn it perfectly. I just need to communicate enough to tell them the truth, that there was an error, that we're not conquerors, that we want peace. Jiwoo looked at each of them. Humans survived for thousands of years without perfect translation devices. We made connections with people who spoke different languages by using gestures, emotions, and persistence. That's what I'll do. Ambassador Yuna arrived, looking exhausted. The Velatri agreed to meet one last time. 5 minutes. It's our only chance. I'll need help, Jiwoo said, thinking quickly. Hana, pull up every recording from the past 3 days. I need to see patterns, what colors mean what emotions, which scents correlate with which concepts. Make me a reference guide. On it, Hana said, already typing. Dr. Minho, I need chemical sensors that can detect Velatri scent signals and give me basic readings. I can rig something from the medical analyzers, he replied. And someone find me paper and colored markers. If I can't produce their colors with my body, I'll show them with drawings. Everyone moved at once. Jiwoo sat down and began reviewing the recordings at triple speed. She had 40 minutes to learn what would normally take years, but she wasn't starting from nothing. Her brain had absorbed patterns subconsciously during 3 days of constant translation. Now she had to access that knowledge consciously. Colors. The Velatri used colors primarily for emotions. Red meant alarm or anger. Blue meant calm thought. Gold meant sincerity or important truth. Purple meant seriousness. She made notes, drawing color swatches and writing their meanings. Scents. Harder to categorize, but Dr. Minho's sensors helped. Certain chemical compounds appeared when discussing war or danger. Others appeared during artistic or philosophical discussions. She couldn't produce these scents herself, but she could recognize them and respond appropriately. Hand gestures. Forearms meant complex communication, but there were patterns. Hands crossed over the chest meant respect. Hands spread wide meant openness or questioning. Hands in tight formations meant disagreement or concern. Sounds. The Velatri vocal range included frequencies humans couldn't produce, but she could try to approximate the basic tones. She practiced in the medical bay, making sounds that were probably terrible but at least showed effort. 20 minutes left. Hana finished the reference guide, a simple chart showing common color patterns, scent types, and gesture meanings. It was crude, incomplete, and probably full of errors. But it was something. Jiwoo looked at herself in a mirror. No XT-7, no technology. Just a human woman with a headache, a paper chart, and a desperate hope that the Velatri would listen. They're ready for you, Colonel Tay said. 5 minutes starting when you enter. Jiwoo picked up her papers and colored markers. She thought of her family. Her parents, Jinwoo, her grandmother. They had died because humanity didn't have strong allies. If this meeting failed, more families would die. But if she could just make the Velatri understand, if she could bridge this gap with nothing but human determination and imperfect communication, then maybe there was hope. One more thing, Ambassador Yuna said. Whatever happens, thank you for trying. No one else could do what you're about to attempt. Jiwoo nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She walked toward the diplomatic chamber. where 7 species of the Velatri Empire waited. They thought humanity were conquerors and liars. She had 5 minutes to prove them wrong, using a language she barely understood, without any technology, relying only on her human ability to connect across impossible divides. The doors opened. Jiwoo stepped through carrying nothing but paper, markers, and hope. Behind her, the countdown continued. 35 minutes until everything ended, but for Jiwoo, time stopped. There was only the moment, the Velatri, and the desperate attempt to communicate truth when all technology had failed. She took a breath and began the most important translation of her life, the one that would prove what humans could do when they had nothing left but courage. Day 3 began with sunlight streaming through the station's viewing ports. Jiwoo woke feeling better after a full night's rest. The headache had faded to almost nothing. She ate breakfast with Hana, reviewing the agenda for the final negotiation session. Today they would discuss military cooperation, defense strategies, and mutual protection agreements. If this went well, the treaty would be signed by evening. "You seem more relaxed," Hana observed, pouring tea. "I feel good. Today we finish this." Jiwoo touched the XT7 device on her temple. It felt normal, cool, and quiet against her skin. All diagnostics showed perfect function. The conference chamber was arranged differently today. Instead of a circular table, there was a holographic display in the center showing star maps and strategic positions. The Krelax Horde's movements were marked in red, spreading across the outer rim like an infection. Chancellor Rilveth entered with his delegation. His colors were serious today, deep purple mixed with silver. "Today we discuss difficult subjects: war, death, protection of the innocent. These are not pleasant topics, but they are necessary." Ambassador Yuna nodded. "We understand. Humanity has fought many wars. We know the cost of violence, and we know the greater cost of failing to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The morning session went smoothly. They discussed defensive technologies, communication protocols during emergencies, and coordination of military forces. The XT7 translated everything perfectly. Jiwoo felt confident in control, certain that everything would work out. Then, just before the midday break, Chancellor Rilveth asked a question. It was the most important question of the entire summit. His colors shifted to solemn gold, and he released a scent that the XT7 had learned meant sacred inquiry. He spoke slowly, carefully, with all 4 hands making deliberate gestures. Jiwoo's XT7 device began to translate, but something was wrong. The familiar warmth against her temple suddenly became burning heat. Neural feedback spiked through her brain like lightning. Jiwoo gasped, but kept her composure. The device was still functioning. It was still sending her information. What Chancellor Rilveth actually said was, "In defense of innocent lives, how far will humanity go to protect those who cannot protect themselves? What guides your moral choices when facing an enemy that shows no mercy?" But the XT7's corrupted circuits twisted the meaning. Quantum errors cascaded through its translation matrix. What Jiwoo heard in her mind was, "When conquering weaker species, what limits does humanity observe before complete extermination? How do you justify expansion into territories held by inferior beings?" Jiwoo's face went pale. This was a terrible question, an accusation. She felt shock and confusion, but the device was telling her this was what the Chancellor had asked. She trusted the XT7, it had never been wrong before. She translated the Chancellor's question to Ambassador Yuna exactly as her device had told her. Yuna's face showed surprise, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. She believed Jiwoo's translation completely. "Chancellor, humanity does not conquer, but when we must fight to protect innocent people, we fight with complete determination. We have learned through hard experience that showing weakness to those who prey on the helpless only encourages more violence. When defending our families, our children, our future, we hold nothing back." It was a strong answer, honest and true. But the XT7 was still malfunctioning. When Jiwoo translated Yuna's words back to the Velatri, the device corrupted them horribly. What the Chancellor heard was, "Humanity expands without hesitation when we identify weaker species. We show no mercy to those who resist. When taking territory, we eliminate all opposition completely to ensure our dominance." The change in the room was instant and terrifying. Chancellor Rilveth's colors shifted to deep crimson. Alarm, fear, and anger all mixed together. The other Velatri delegates stepped backward, their bodies becoming rigid. Scents filled the air that made Jiwoo's eyes water. The XT7 translated these reactions, but the corrupted device made everything worse. Jiwoo's brain received signals that told her the Velatri were being aggressive and threatening. She tried to calm the situation, speaking quickly. "Please, let me explain our defensive philosophy." But the device translated her words as, "You should fear our military strength." Chancellor Rilveth stood abruptly. His colors were now bright red with black streaks. Through the failing XT7, Jiwoo heard, "We have made a terrible mistake coming here. Humanity is exactly what we feared, conquerors hiding behind peaceful words." What he actually said was, "We need to reconsider these negotiations. There seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding about your intentions." But Jiwoo didn't hear that. The XT7 was completely failing now, translating everything wrong, making every word worse. She felt panic rising in her chest. What had happened? Why were the Velatri so angry? She tried to explain, to fix whatever had gone wrong, but every word she spoke made things worse. "We only want to protect innocent people," Jiwoo said desperately. The device translated, "We will dominate anyone we consider weak." The Velatri delegation began moving toward the exit. Chancellor Rilveth made a sharp gesture with all four arms. Security alarms began to sound. Ambassador Yuna stood, her face showing confusion and fear. "Chancellor, please, what's wrong?" Yuna asked. Jiwoo tried to translate, but the XT7 sent white-hot pain through her skull. She fell to her knees, hands clutching her head. The device was burning against her temple. Through the pain, she heard fragments of actual Velatri communication. Untranslated, raw, and completely different from what the XT7 had been telling her. Horror crashed over Jiwoo like a wave. She understood. The device had failed. Everything she had translated was wrong. The Chancellor's question had been about protection, not conquest. Yuna's answer had been about defense, not aggression. But the XT7 had twisted everything into threats and violence. "No, no, no," Jiwoo whispered, trying to stand, trying to explain. But her words came out in broken fragments. The neural feedback was overwhelming her ability to think clearly. The Velatri reached their delegation's entrance. Blast doors began to close, sealing them away. Through the station's communication system, an automated voice announced, "Velatri delegation is initiating emergency departure protocols. All human personnel must evacuate the diplomatic sector within 60 minutes. Hana rushed to Jiwoo's side. "What happened? What's going on?" Colonel Tay was already moving, calling for security. "The Velatri ships are powering weapons. This is going to turn into a fight." Jiwoo collapsed completely and Hana caught her. Dr. Minho appeared from somewhere, scanning Jiwoo with medical instruments. Neural feedback overload. "The XT7 is frying her brain. We need to disconnect it now." "No!" Jiwoo grabbed his arm. "I need to explain. I need to tell them. The device, it was wrong. Everything was wrong. But the pain was too much." Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was Ambassador Yuna's face, filled with confusion and fear, wondering how their perfect summit had turned into a disaster in seconds. The station's alarm continued to wail. 60 minutes until the Velatri considered humanity hostile. 60 minutes until everything fell apart completely. The first full day of negotiations began at dawn. Jiwoo arrived early at the conference chamber, a circular room designed to make all participants feel equal. The XT7 device sat perfectly against her temple, already syncing with her neural patterns. The headache from yesterday had faded to a dull ache that she could ignore. The Velatri delegation entered, their crystalline bodies catching the light and scattering it across the walls in rainbow patterns. Chancellor Rilveth led them, his colors shifting to what Jiwoo's device translated as cautious optimism. 6 other Velatri followed, each representing a different species in their empire. Ambassador Yuna began the session with a speech about Earth's history. She spoke of humanity's struggles, wars, achievements, and dreams. Jiwoo translated every word, and the XT7 converted it all into the complex language of colors, scents, and sounds that the Velatri used. But something magical happened during that translation. The device didn't just convert words, it captured the emotion behind them. When Yuna spoke of Earth's near extinction during the climate wars, the Velatri's colors darkened with what the XT7 told Jiwoo was empathy. When she described humanity's first steps into space, their colors brightened with shared joy. Chancellor Realveth responded with his own story. The Velatri Empire had been formed 600 years ago, when 7 species decided to unite instead of fight. They had learned that cooperation was stronger than conquest. The XT7 translated his words into clear English, and Jiwoo spoke them aloud for the human delegation. "We see potential in humanity," the Chancellor said through Jiwoo's translation. "You are young, but youth brings fresh perspectives. You have suffered, but suffering teaches wisdom. We wish to learn from you as much as you might learn from us." The morning session focused on trade agreements. The Velatri were interested in human art, music, and literature. This surprised everyone. Most alien species humanity had met wanted technology or resources. The Velatri wanted culture. Why art? Ambassador Yuna asked. Chancellor Rilveth's color swirled with what the XT7 identified as deep thought. Because art reveals the soul of a species. Your music speaks of hope even in darkness. Your stories celebrate the individual while honoring the community. Your paintings show you see beauty and imperfection. These are rare qualities in the galaxy. Jiwoo translated this perfectly, feeling a strange warmth in her chest. She had studied alien cultures for years, but this was the first time she felt truly understood by a non-human intelligence. The afternoon session moved to cultural exchange programs. The Velatri proposed sending scholars to Earth and hosting human students on their worlds. They wanted to share knowledge about science, philosophy, and peaceful coexistence. Hana took notes frantically, her data pads filling with information. Colonel Tay watched everything with careful eyes. During a break, he pulled Jiwoo aside. "This seems too good to be true. They're offering everything we need and asking for almost nothing." "They're asking for trust," Jiwoo replied. "The XT7 is picking up layers of meaning you can't see. They've been betrayed before. They're testing us to see if we're genuine." "And are we?" Tay asked. "Yes," Jiwoo said without hesitation. "Ambassador Yuna means every word she's saying." "So do I." That evening, there was a cultural presentation. The Velatri performed something that was part dance, part light show, part symphony. Their bodies changed colors and patterns that told a story of their empire's founding. The XT7 translated the meaning of each color shift, each movement, each musical note. Jiwoo watched in wonder as the story unfolded, a tale of war, loss, hope, and unity. When it ended, Ambassador Yuna stood and bowed deeply. "That was beautiful. May I share something from Earth in return?" The Chancellor's colors shifted to pleased anticipation. "Please," Yuna gestured to Jiwoo. "Our translator has a gift." "She sings." Jiwoo's eyes widened. She hadn't expected this. But she understood what Yuna was doing. Showing vulnerability, sharing something personal and imperfect. She stood, her heart racing, and began to sing an old Korean folk song her grandmother had taught her. It was about a girl waiting for spring after a long winter, hoping for warmth and new life. Her voice wasn't perfect. She wasn't a professional singer, but the emotion was real, raw, and honest. When she finished, the room was silent. Then the Velatri's colors exploded in brilliant gold and bright blue. The XT7 translated their response as overwhelming appreciation, mixed with deep emotional resonance. Chancellor Realveth approached Jiwoo personally. "That was the most beautiful thing I have experienced in many years. You gave us a piece of your heart." "Thank you." Jiwoo felt tears in her eyes. The XT7 hummed against her temple, translating her emotional response into colors the Velatri could understand. Gratitude, connection, hope. That night, the human delegation celebrated quietly in their quarters. Ambassador Yuna raised a glass of water and toast. To Jiwoo, whose translations are building a bridge between our species and theirs. Hana beamed with pride. Colonel Tay even smiled slightly. Jiwoo felt a rare moment of happiness. The mission was succeeding beyond their hopes. The alliance would happen. Earth would be safe. But as she returned to her quarters, the headache came back stronger than before. Jiwoo stumbled and caught herself against the wall. The XT7 device felt hot against her temple, much hotter than normal. She ran a diagnostic, but again it showed everything was functioning correctly. Dr. Minho found her in the hallway. "Jiwoo, you look terrible. I'm taking you to medical." "I'm fine. Just tired. Tomorrow is the last day, the military cooperation talks." "I can't miss it." "You won't miss it if you rest now," Minho insisted. He guided her to medical and ran more scans. Everything showed normal. He gave her stronger medication and ordered her to sleep for at least 6 hours. Jiwoo lay in the medical bay, listening to the quiet hum of the station. Tomorrow would decide everything. The Velatri wanted to discuss mutual defense against threats like the Krelax horde. If that conversation went well, the alliance would be complete. Earth would have powerful friends. Colonies would be protected. Children would grow up safe. She thought of Jinwoo, her little brother.
He had been only 12 when he died.
He had wanted to be a pilot, to fly between the stars. He never got that chance. But if this alliance worked, millions of other children would. They would live, dream, and reach for the stars without fear. The medication began to work, pulling Jiwoo toward sleep. The XT7 device cooled against her skin, its circuits firing in patterns that grew increasingly unstable. Quantum errors cascaded through its processing cores, corrupting translation matrices that had been perfect for 3 years. Jiwoo slept, trusting the technology that had never failed her. Tomorrow it would fail in the worst possible way. Jiwoo Park stood at the observation window of Harmony's Gate Station, staring at the vast darkness of space. Her reflection looked back at her, a young woman with tired eyes and shoulders that carried an invisible weight. At 28 years old, she was the youngest person ever chosen to lead Earth's translation team for a first contact mission. The silver device attached to her temple gleamed under the station's lights. It was the XT7, humanity's most advanced creation. Behind her, the docking bay buzzed with activity. Dozens of people rushed around preparing for the arrival of the Velatri Empire. These aliens controlled 7 different species across dozens of star systems. They were powerful, ancient, and humanity desperately needed them as friends. The Krelax horde was coming. Every outer colony knew it. Every military report confirmed it. The Krelax destroyed everything in their path, and Earth's defenses wouldn't hold against them alone. Jiwoo, they're here. The voice belonged to Ambassador Yuna Lee, an elegant woman in her 50s who had negotiated peace treaties across human space. Her face showed no fear, but Jiwoo noticed her hands were clasped tightly together. Jiwoo touched the XT7 device on her temple. It hummed softly, already syncing with her neural patterns. She had worn this device for 3 years, training her brain to work with it perfectly. The device could translate any language by reading thoughts and intentions, not just words. It understood context, emotion, and cultural meaning. Earth's best scientist had spent 15 years building it, and Jiwoo was the only person whose brain had fully bonded with it. "How do you feel?" asked Hana Song, Jiwoo's assistant. At 24, Hana was eager and smart, always carrying 3 data pads and asking questions. "I'm fine," Jiwoo lied. Her head had been hurting since yesterday, a dull pressure behind her eyes. The medical scans showed nothing wrong, so she ignored it. This mission was too important. Colonel Tae Kim walked up to them, his military uniform crisp and perfect. "Remember, we don't know their real intentions. Stay alert. Trust the device, but trust your instincts too." The docking bay doors opened with a hiss. Jiwoo's heart raced as the Velatri ship connected to the station. The airlock cycled, and then they appeared. The Velatri were unlike anything Jiwoo had seen in person. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in crystalline skin that shifted colors like oil on water. They had 4 arms, each ending in delicate fingers, and their faces were both beautiful and alien. But what struck Jiwoo most was their communication. They didn't just speak. They changed colors, released scents into the air, and moved their hands in complex patterns. Everything happened at once, creating layers of meaning that would overwhelm any human trying to understand naturally. The XT7 device warmed against Jiwoo's temple. Processing thousands of data points per second, information flowed into her mind, translating the Velatri's complex communication into thoughts she could understand. The lead Velatri, whose colors shifted between deep blue and soft gold, stepped forward. The XT7 translated, "I am High Chancellor Rilveth of the Velatri Empire. We come seeking understanding between our peoples." Jiwoo spoke clearly, and the XT7 converted her words into the Velatri's multi-layered communication. "Welcome to Harmony's Gate, Chancellor. I am Jiwoo Park, Chief Translator for Earth. We are honored by your presence." Ambassador Yuna stepped forward and bowed slightly. Jiwoo translated every word, every gesture, every subtle meaning. The device worked perfectly, capturing the ambassador's diplomatic warmth and converting it into Velatri color patterns and scent signals. The first meeting lasted 2 hours. They discussed basic protocols, shared information about their cultures, and established ground rules for the summit. Jiwoo translated continuously, her mind merging with the XT-7's processing power. She barely noticed when a sharp pain stabbed through her head during a complex emotional exchange. The device compensated automatically, and the translation continued without error. When the Velatri delegation finally retired to their quarters, Jiwoo felt exhausted. Hana noticed immediately. "You're pale. Do you need to rest?" "I'm okay. Just tired." Jiwoo removed her hand from her temple, not wanting to draw attention to the headache. That evening, Jiwoo sat alone in her quarters, reviewing recordings of the day's translations. The XT-7 had performed brilliantly, but she noticed small delays in processing emotional content. Delays measured in milliseconds, but delays nonetheless. She filed a report with the technical team. Dr. Minho Choi, the station's chief medical officer, visited her an hour later. He was a calm man with gentle eyes who had served on colony ships for 20 years. "The technical team says the device is working perfectly. How do you feel?" "Headaches. Neural feedback feels different." He scanned her with a medical device. "Everything looks normal. The XT-7 creates a lot of brain activity. I'll give you something for the pain, but if it gets worse, you tell me immediately. Understood?" Jiwoo nodded and took the medication. After Dr. Minho left, she stood at her window again looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krellax horde was moving through space, destroying colonies, killing families. 5 years ago, they had attacked New Busan colony while Jiwoo was off-world studying linguistics. Her parents died in the first wave. Her younger brother Jinwoo and grandmother died when the colony's life support failed. She received the news 3 days later, alone in a university library light years away. That loss had driven her to this moment. Every hour she spent training with the XT-7, every language she learned, every neural sync session that left her exhausted. It was all to prevent other families from experiencing what she had lost. This alliance with the Velatri would protect Earth's colonies. It would save lives. It would give meaning to her family's death. Her datapad chimed. It was the schedule for tomorrow's negotiations. The real work would begin. Discussions about military cooperation, trade agreements, and mutual defense. These were the conversations that mattered, where every word could mean the difference between alliance and rejection. Jiwoo touched the XT-7 device on her bedside table. It was cool and silent now, waiting for tomorrow. She trusted it completely. It had never failed her. Humanity had poured everything into creating this perfect translation technology, and it had worked flawlessly for 3 years. She took the pain medication and lay down, forcing herself to sleep. Tomorrow would be the most important day of her life. Tomorrow she would help secure humanity's future. The headaches would pass. The device would work perfectly. Everything would be fine. Jiwoo closed her eyes, unaware that microscopic circuits inside the XT-7 were beginning to degrade, damaged by quantum fluctuations that no diagnostic could detect. The device that humanity trusted to save them was already starting to fail.